Hi, my name is Jessica Thomas, and I had the pleasure of serving as the 2024 chair of the Forms Committee. Not a big deal, not any major changes, but we do have some changes for 2025 that I want to go over. Please note, I'm not going to go over every change, but you can find all of the resources at kcrir.com/forms and see all of the insights into the changes that are going to be effective on December 16th and available to you on January 1st. As of January 1st, 2025, it is important to know that there are a few forms that will no longer be available as we have sunset them. There are 2 coronavirus forms, the cooperation agreement between brokers, and the 2 NAR settlement amendments that came out for buyer agency and listing agreements. None of those forms will be available to you after January 1st of 2025. For contingency transactions, there were 2 changes. The contingency for the sale and closing addendum had some language where it said written notice was due, and that has been replaced, requiring a signed kickout notice of backup contract form to eliminate any confusion about the process. And that kickout notice and notice of backup contract form has been simplified and some fields removed just to make that form a lot less confusing. There are 2 occupancy agreements that we have, occupancy prior to closing and occupancy after closing. Those have been renamed to an addendum/amendment so that there is no confusion about how that form is to be used and when that form is to be used. Our old septic system addendum has been renamed to the wastewater system addendum. That has been fully revised to include all types of wastewater systems. The seller's disclosure had a small change, but I think you'll find that it's a big change for your sellers. On paragraph 7, we added 7B to include other pests such as bats, rodents, and nuisance wildlife. Remove termites from 7C and other pests from 7A. Hopefully this gives your seller a new perspective on how we define pest and other things that could be egregious to a buyer. On the residential and counter offer forms, and this includes the residential homes, the new homes contract, as well as the land contract. There was some confusion on when earnest deposits were due, and it caused us to take a look at everything in the form. And after the effective date is when the clock starts ticking, and those forms have all been updated to show that. So if you see of the effective date currently on January 1st, those forms should all say consistently after the effective date. You can see line numbers and page number specifics at kcrir.com. Those are the changes that don't have anything to do with that NAR settlement. So if you weren't aware, in August, we did make some form changes to respond to the NAR settlement that was required of us and effective on August 14th. As it turns out, they weren't awful changes. And so we didn't have a lot of changes that we needed to make to those, but there are some changes that are coming to those forms effective January 1st. Please note that the new normal and the process of put it in the contract is not going away. But what we did is make some clarifying languages in those forms. On every listing agreement with the exclusive right to sale and the exclusive agency in every form in our library, we added some grammatical changes. You can see that online, but we also added language to compensate for unrepresented buyers. So you no longer need to add language for in the event of an unrepresented buyer or feel like you have to work as an attorney to figure out that language yourself. We also entirely removed the text regarding the seller's willingness to compensate and the authorization about that compensation, as a seller never really had control over what a buyer wanted to put in their offer to them. So put it in the contract still applies. There's just a little bit more clarifying language for you. On the buyer agency agreement, same scenario, where if you're working with an unrepresented seller, like a for sale by owner, that language has also been added to your buyer agency agreements. The seller's permission to show form for sale by owners has been renamed. Commission contract has been removed from that name, and the compensation language has been revamped to match our other forms. The resolution of unacceptable conditions has also had a change this year. The language regarding negotiations in paragraph 2B has been clarified to state that the compensation for the broker assisting the buyer is not part of your inspection negotiations. So please note that any other changes to that would need separate amendments, and that language has been clarified on the resolution. So there should be no confusion on what the ask is when you are negotiating those. And then the old cooperation agreement between brokers If a brokerage is still offering cooperating compensation to a buyer's agent, there is now a compensation agreement between brokers. This replaces that cooperation agreement form, which is going to be sunset, and clarifies that listing agent is sharing compensation with the buyer's agent and all parties have an agreement. Not a lot of changes, really. Please make sure that you review all of the form changes at kcrar.com/forms. It was a pleasure to serve as your Forms Committee chairperson. I look forward to turning it over to Michelle, so you will still be in great hands next year. And if you have any questions, the staff at KCRAR and the volunteer committee leaders are also happy to help.